Quick video demo of the new code exporter flow. Apologize for low audio quality. Just want to get this out quickly to get some feedback on it. So you've already seen me build a blog using GitHub before. I'm going to do the same thing, just a bit more iteratively this time. So I'm going to make a new query. I'm going to go ahead and go into GitHub. We'll pull out a repository, and I'm going to go ahead and lock this down to OneGraph sa.dev for right now. And once we have this repository, let's pull out the ID, maybe the description, and the name of the repository. And this is actually enough to go ahead and get started. You can see that just like before, we have a full relay set of components being generated for this operation, but we also have a GitHub integration here. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new GitHub repository. And now that it's created, let's go ahead and push our changes. And this initial push is going to push up all of the scaffolding necessary for a full node relay application. Okay, and now with that pushed, I'll go ahead and open that up. It's pushed entirely from the browser, by the way. Now we have our brand new created repository with all of our code. And I'm going to go ahead and create a Codespace so I can hack on this and see it running as well. And GitHub Codespaces, very cool, very capable. Takes a few minutes to initialize the first time. It's booting up containers and all sorts of stuff. Okay, so once this is booted up, it's, like I said, very impressive. Basically a full VS Code instance in the cloud along with terminals and whatnot. And you can see here that we've actually pushed enough information up so that it recognizes that this is a node project, and it's going to go ahead and set up lots of niceties inside of the editor, as well as install all of the dependencies for us automatically. Okay, so you can see that it's installed all the node modules, it's created a lock file. So all that's left for us to do is go ahead and run npm start to boot up the application. This is going to start the relay compiler, which is going to generate all sorts of GraphQL artifacts. But importantly, it's also going to start up a local server that's going to bind to port 3000. You can see here that Codespaces recognizes that. It prompts me to actually open it up. You can see here that we actually have our application running already. And all we need to do now is log into GitHub. And you can see here that we haven't actually configured this application to run with this subdomain because it is a randomly generated subdomain. But that's also built into our configuration, so we don't need to worry about that. So as a developer, I can just go ahead and click on that and say I'm okay with it. And I don't even have to restart the flow. I can just refresh and go ahead and authorize, and boom, we're already getting some data back for our application. And if I want to know where this component is coming from, I have this little location marker here. You can see that on Post.js, line 33, is where this is actually generated. I'm going to go ahead and throw these two applications over in their own workspace and put them side by side. But for right now, let's go ahead and go back to our query and make it a little bit more robust. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out some issues. I'm going to lock this down for the time being so that it's just created by me, but I'll make that a variable as well. And I only want the ones that are actually ready to be published. I'll pull out the edges and nodes so that we can paginate through them. Just like before, I'm going to go ahead and pull out the author. We'll do get their picture, their login, their URL. Let's go ahead and make that a fragment down here. For the post itself, I'll pull out the body, pull out the ID, the number, and the title. So basically everything we'd expect from a post. Let's go ahead and call this post instead of issues and this post instead of node. And this is looking pretty good. I'd also like to pull out some comments here. Let's go ahead and pull out the edges and node. We'll pull out the body HTML, maybe the ID and the URL. Also pull out the author, pull that out and use our author fragment. Let's go ahead and make this a standalone component. And then I also like to rename this so it's a little bit more approachable. So say comment and author. So these two are looking good. Similarly, I'd like post to be its own standalone component. So go ahead and extract that. And we'll go ahead and name this one post. And so now we have a query of posts. It's pulling out a repository and getting a list of posts inside of it. And for each of those posts, it's using this fragment. That fragment is pulling out a little bit of metadata, the content, as well as the comments, etc. So this is good. Let's go ahead and go back to our code exporter. And I'm going to go ahead and just push. And it's going to notice that there are some changes to app and posts, as well as some new files that we've created as a result of this. I'm okay with that, so I'll go ahead and let it push all of those files. And now when we go back to our application, we can go ahead and actually just run git sync. It's going to pull everything down, compile everything, and restart our application. And boom, we actually have now a form here. We have our individual posts. We have our author for our posts, our comment uses, comments on the post, and authors and whatnot. If I wanted to, this is a fully working form, so I can say, give me the posts by Daniel. You can see that works just as well. We have this nice little picture here. Let's go ahead and make these components a little bit more visually nice. So I'm going to go ahead and go into, if I want to know, for example, author is on line 25. So let's go ahead and make this author a little bit nicer. Okay, so with that already done, we should be able to come over here and see that everywhere that our author is used, both for the author for the original post as well as for the comments, it's been updated, which is great. Let's go ahead and update comments while we're at it. So I can see here that this is in the comment.js file. And we'll do the same thing. We'll just have, this is who it's by, and then we'll set the content of the component. There we go. So now we have our individual comments. We have the author components working there. Pagination is working as well, so you can see I can just load individual comments here. You can see that it knows that this is comments, whereas down at the bottom we would be fetching more posts. And that's all derived from the component itself. So this is looking pretty good. I'll do the same thing real quick for the post. So this is going to be over in line 96. So let's go look at the data component for the post. Okay, and with that, we have our post rendering as HTML, which looks good. And I can see this comment uses here. I don't want it, so I can see that this is actually on line 20 of posts. So if I come up here, let's go ahead and remove that. It'll refresh, and we can see that this is starting to look good. Same with this post uses. So on posts 22, and I'll do the same thing. We'll just go ahead and remove that. Paginated repository issues is on post 107. So basically, anytime I see something that I might want to change, I can just go ahead and find the source and go in and edit it. And also, I don't need, this is for the metadata of the actual posts themselves. So let's go ahead and remove that. And while I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and change the title of this to Sean's GitHub blog. Okay, so this is all looking pretty good. I have my posts, I have my paginated comments and my paginated posts. I can fetch more posts down here. It's all looking good. Let's go ahead and make it so that I can actually reply to these posts. So I'm going to come back over here. Same idea as before. We'll go ahead and add a new mutation. This mutation is called reply. Inside of GitHub, I'll go ahead and use the add comment. I'll make these two variables, and then having made a comment, I want to get that comment back. Let's go ahead and make these required variables. And now the last thing is, whenever I do get a comment, I want to go ahead and be notified. So that's going to be an event that happens inside of GitHub, an issue comment event. And again, I'm going to lock this down to OneGraph sa.dev. Whenever there is a comment that comes in, I'll go ahead and pull that out. And there we go. This is basically our full application. Let's go ahead and come into our code exporter and synchronize. You can see that some of this is going to be overwritten. In this case, I don't need to update the GraphQL schema, so I'm just going to say skip that. But I do want these two things to be in here, and I want the overall container to be updated. So we'll push. That should be a relatively quick push. Whenever we come back over here, we can go ahead and synchronize. And now we have our posts, we have our reply, and we have our notifications. So just to show that this is working already, let's go ahead and inside of our post, let's show what the data ID is. So that we have something to test with in our form. So that'll load up, scroll down, and let's go ahead and just comment on this first post as a unikernel. So I'll throw that in there. I'll say, wow, real time. If I run that, we see that this comes in and our component is also being used down here. And again, this is reusing that comment component fragment that we used beforehand. And so this looks pretty good. The last thing I really want to do, I guess, is just move this reply inside of this post component and just kind of show how the generated components can really be used independently very, very nicely. So inside of our post, whenever we have our recent comments, right before that I'm going to say leave a comment. And I want to actually go ahead and use the reply. And the subject ID is going to be the data.id, so the ID of this post. And let's go ahead and import reply. And the last thing we need to do is inside of reply, we don't actually want to have the form to reply to leave a new mutation or a comment to have all of this extra data. So let's go ahead and clean that form up real quick. So again, I can just kind of hover over this and see where it's defined on line 95. So we'll remove that. The form element, likewise, shouldn't actually allow the user to change the subject. I don't want the body to be labeled. And let's change this to a text area. Okay, so that's looking a little bit more comment-like. Now the last thing is, whenever we actually run this mutation, I want to use the form variables, so this body that's actually built in here, but I want to make sure that the subject ID is set to the props.subject ID. So we're going to expect whatever parent container is calling us to pass in the subject that we're actually commenting on. And with that, I think that looks pretty good. Instead of run reply mutation, let's go ahead and also say leave comment. Okay, so this looks pretty good. I should be able to, anywhere in here, come down and let's go ahead and say, looks looking slick. And if I submit this comment, you can see that this comes back as we'd expect. We get a notification. And likewise, if we just go directly to any of our posts inside of sa.dev and we leave a comment here. So I'll go ahead and say, hello world. And I go ahead and comment there. You see that that's going to actually come over here as well and still use the same components that we have. And I guess the last thing we really could do is maybe inside of the app container that pulls all these things together. We don't really need to have the visual thing there. We don't need to have a standalone reply. So overall, that's looking pretty good. Yeah, so now we have basically a full set of posts. So if we want to see, for example, Daniel's post again, you can see that he's posting about pies, and I can say, looks delicious. Submit my comment, it'll come right in. We see all of his posts, nice formatting, we get some notifications, etc. So you can kind of see like how quickly you can go back and forth between just getting something out, editing it, building up that component, and then going back and adding more operations that refer to those components, and they all just kind of get embedded inside of each other.